Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Red Talk's Uncommon Voices on Topics That Matter, under the umbrella of inclusive excellence and in partnership with the Office of the Provost. The idea here is to feature our dynamic and talented faculty voices across campus and across disciplines. We are Seattle University, and we sit in one of the most vibrant and creative cities in the world. Our vision is that Seattle University will expand its reach within the local community and advance as a thought leader and a partner on issues that matter and that bear on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are a Jesuit Catholic university whose mission is focused on educating the whole person. When we speak about inclusive excellence, the idea is that there will be no dichotomy between academic excellence on the one hand, diversity, equity, and inclusion on the other. At the heart of Jesuit education is the search for meaning. It is the discovery of knowledge to use it to have an impact on the world. We are going to engage and inform what it really means to be a values-based institution that is educating leaders for a just and humane world. This inaugural series is titled Women's Voices at the Intersection. At a time when women's voices are dismissed, diminished, and distorted, it is an important opportunity for us to create a forum to explore women's leadership. At this time, I would like to invite our provost up, Dr. Shane Martin. He will introduce our inaugural Red Talk speaker, Professor Brooke Coleman.
When Natasha talked to me about this event, I was very excited as your provost to partner with her and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And this year's theme is especially important and timely in our world as we think about women's voices at the intersection. It speaks so much to the times that we're living in. I can't help but think, for example, where would we be in the Catholic Church in terms of the current clergy abuse crisis if we recognized the gifts and the leadership of women at all levels of ministry? These are just things that we think about. So I am pleased that today's speaker is a distinguished faculty member from our law school. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court, was once asked, what would it take for gender equality on the Supreme Court? Or in other words, she was asked, so how many women would it take for there to be gender equity? And without batting an eye, she famously said, 9. When asked about her statement later, she said that while she knew her words would shock some, for the majority of the years of the Supreme Court, it was all men, and nobody seemed shocked and nobody fell apart. So today we're privileged to have as our inaugural speaker, Professor Brooke Coleman, whose talk is entitled, Who Makes the Rules? Often they are #so white male. What does that mean and why should we care? And I want to say that when I read that title, I thought, I want to be at that talk. I need to be at that talk. And then Natasha invited me to introduce our speaker. Professor Brooke Coleman is a professor of law in Seattle University's School of Law, where she also serves as co-associate dean of research and faculty development. Professor Coleman's research and teaching interests focus on procedure and procedural justice. Her work has been published in many prestigious law journals, and she co-authored an innovative civil procedure casebook, Learning Civil Procedure. She has received numerous awards and honors for her teaching, including the law school's Outstanding Faculty Award in 2013, 2015, and 2016. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Brooke Coleman.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, so you know what happens when you type in the words all male cabinet or all female cabinet into your Google search engine? It's that really smart algorithm, so it fills it in for you because it thinks it knows what you're going to do. Behind the words all-female cabinet, it fills in the words House of Cards. And the reason why is because the only all-female cabinet that we know of is one that is in fiction. It exists only in our imagination. And as near as I can tell, it only exists in one series on Netflix. However, if we were to type in the words all-male cabinet, you know what happens? Google doesn't fill in a thing for you. You press return and you get nothing but choices. Images, stories, anything you want to know about all-male presidential cabinets. This is because we had a all-white, all-male presidential cabinet for hundreds of years and a predominantly all-white, all-male presidential cabinet for decades. This is our reality. We live within all of these power structures. Now, of course, the presidential cabinet is not the only one of these power structures. There are many more, and we operate within them on a daily basis. And the one thing that they have in common, for the most part, is that there is one gender and one race that's in charge. Now, today, I'm going to talk to you about this topic. And it's going to be a narrow part of my research. But what I want us to be doing is thinking bigger. We have a real opportunity here because of people like Natasha Martin, our Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, and other visionary leaders at Seattle University School of Law, at Seattle University. We have, just get that plug in, we have so many more opportunities for us to engage, to problem solve, to community build, and most important, to lead. So as I talk about this today, I hope you're thinking things about my research and that you're interested. But more than anything else, I also hope that you're thinking about what we can do individually, as a community, and within our broader community as well. So as you may or may not know, I am a law professor. And if you do know that and you came anyway, thank you. I'm a law professor, and what I study is something called civil procedure. Civil procedure is the study of the rules of procedure of how we do civil litigation. If you want to file a claim, you have to know what rules to follow. So I am a rules nerd. I ask a lot of questions. What are the rules? What should be the rules? Who should make the rules? What should the process look like? You can imagine what Monopoly is like in my house, right? The rules really, really matter. And so I ask all these questions, and the biggest thing I ask is, what is the most fair process? Now, recently, we've had some really public examples of process. And what I'm thinking of right now is, of course, the confirmation hearings for the most recent Supreme Court Justice, Brett Kavanaugh. And what we had in this moment was a very visual moment where we have an almost all-white male Senate Judiciary Committee sitting in judgment of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's allegations of the sexual assault that she suffered at the hands of Justice Kavanaugh. This image will be forever burned into our collective public consciousness. But for those of us who are old enough to remember, or for those of us who are students who think about history, we'll remember that not long ago, there was another similar experience with Professor Anita Hill and her testimony about the sexual harassment that she experienced at the hands of now Justice Clarence Thomas. Now, her testimony was done before a truly all-white Senate Judiciary Committee. But 27 years later, we have an almost all-white Senate Judiciary Committee. It is a testament to the progress that has not been made. Now, this is a very public display of this disparity. What I like to think about are the more private, if you will, submerged, less visible power structures that exist that we may not be thinking about. And that's what brings me to my work on the Civil Rules Committee. Now, the Civil Rules Committee is this little known committee that you've never heard of, and you may never hear of again after today, that makes the rules of civil procedure. They literally write the rules. Now, again, you might be thinking, why do I care about the rules of civil procedure? What does that matter to me? I mean, I know the rules for Monopoly matter, but why does civil procedure matter? Well, I'm here to tell you that the headlines are chock full of reasons that you should care. If we have rules and laws around gender and race discrimination, one major lever that we can pull to enforce those laws is civil litigation. And the way that we litigate is governed by these rules. So you'll notice that most of the headlines behind me are class actions. Well, class actions are a procedure, they're a rule, they're a device. Instead of one individual litigating her claim for gender discrimination against Walmart, a number of individuals can band together and make a bigger statement. They can put their resources together, they can do more. In many ways, it levels the playing field. Well, the rule around banding together is Rule 23 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. And you know who wrote that rule and who has the power to amend that rule? The Civil Rules Committee. I have one more example for you. What if you're in litigation on the basis of racial discrimination and you know that the company has that smoking gun email somewhere in its server, right? It's somewhere out there. And you want to get that email. The way you get it is another litigation device. You do something called discovery, where the rule allows for you to ask for and it compels production of that kind of information. Discovery, the one that we're talking about here, is mostly about Rule 26. Who writes Rule 26? Who amends Rule 26? I bet you can guess. The Civil Rules Committee, right? They're the ones who make these particular rules. So this rule committee matters. It really, really matters. So what I decided I wanted to do was look at this committee. Now, where does this committee come from? Well, interestingly enough, in 1934, there was legislation passed that created this system. And what it provides is that Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, can select a committee to write the rules. So that means that Chief Justice John Roberts is now the person who selects this committee. There are 14 or 15 members on this committee. They are federal judges, they are lawyers, and then they throw in a couple of academics for good measure, right? And so the Chief Justice makes these appointments every year, and they serve for terms of 3 years, and then they can maybe serve a couple of terms, and then they move on. Okay, so I decided, well, what does this committee really look like? What is the gender and racial composition of this committee over time? So with the able assistance of my amazing research assistant, Ebony Parr, she went back and dug up all the records of all the committees that had been in place since 1934, all the way through the beginning of 2018. And then we went through and we researched who these people are. What was their race? What were their gender? What did they do? And we came up with some pretty interesting numbers. Out of the 136 individuals who have ever served on the advisory committee, on the Civil Rules Committee, 116 have been white men, 15 have been white women, 4 have been black men, and 1 has been a Latino man. We can look at it this way. If we look at the committee composition by race, you can see that 96% of the committee is white. 3% of the committee is black, and 1% of the committee is Latina. That's kind of a rounding error because it's 1%. If we look at it by gender, the committee composition is 89% men, 11% women. You look at the intersection of gender and race, 85% white men, 11% white women, and then 3% black men and 1% Latina men. Notice, please, not one woman of color, not ever, has served on this committee. Not once, not ever. If we look at this data also in different ways, we learn something. If you look at the committee composition by decade, racially, you can see that people of color, and by that I mean men of color, because no women of color have been on the committee, start getting appointed to the committee in the 1960s. Then you'll notice not much change happens until there's no one on the committee in the 1980s, and then it's steady state until present day. With respect to gender, you can see that women, and we're talking about white women, are not appointed to the committee until the 1970s, and then it kicks up a little bit, drops back down in the early 2000s, and then it picks back up in the most recent decade. All right. So one of the questions I get about this particular data every time I present it, whether it be in these kinds of forums or on Twitter, is, because I present this stuff on Twitter, right, is what if the Chief Justice just actually doesn't have a pool of candidates from which he can appoint diverse people? Like, what if he just doesn't have enough people of color to draw from? Well, and as an aside, that usually presents on Twitter in the following way. Hey, little lady, you just need to be a little bit more patient. Change takes time, right? Well, I don't so much like the tone of that comment, but I think the heart of both of those comments is a good question. It's a really good question. So I looked at the pool from which the Chief Justice pulls his appointments. The one I want to share with you today is federal trial judges, federal district court judges. Because federal trial judges are about 6 or 7 of this 14 to 15 person committee. They're about half of the committee. And when we look at that, you can see that white people are overrepresented even on the committee. So white people make up 93% of the committee, yet they're 71% of the federal bench. Black people are 7% of the committee. Again, that's one person, because I'm looking at the current committee. Yet they're 14% of the federal bench. Latinx folks, 0% of the committee. Yet they're 10% of the federal bench. If we look at the intersection of gender and race, the picture is even more bleak. White men are definitely overrepresented on the committee, but so are white women. As I'll talk about in a little bit, the Chief Justice has made some new appointments. White women are even overrepresented on the committee now. We have no women of color on the committee, yet Black women make up 6% of the federal bench. Latina women are 4%, and Asian American women are 1%. So it's not that there's not a pool of candidates. What's missing? Institutional will. So why should we care? Why do we care about diversity? What's the point? Well, I want to talk about one thing just in the context of this rulemaking process, but then I hope we can think a little bit bigger. So in the context of the rulemaking committee, I argue we should care about diversity because decision-making bodies do better when there are more voices. They mitigate bias. So sure, everyone walks into the room with their experiences, with their ideologies, with all the things about them. Part of it is also their gender and racial identity. And the more of those voices you have in a room, almost every social science study I've looked at with respect to group decision-making tells us that the decisions that are made, the product that is made, is better. This is especially true in the context of federal civil rulemaking because it is a long deliberative process. It takes 3 years from start to finish to pass a rule. It necessarily would do better with more friction, with more conflict, with more accuracy, which you're going to get with more diverse voices. The other reason I argue we should care about diversity is a moral one. Right? The legal profession has a history of excluding women of all colors and men of color. It's just the way it has been. So I argue that judges, lawyers, academics, those of us in positions of power have a moral obligation to not just create a gateway, but a pathway. It's not enough to let more people of color into law school. It's not enough to let them into the legal profession. It's not enough to just open that door, but we must create a pathway so that people can actually excel and reach the highest echelons of their profession. The Civil Rules Committee is one of those places. Now, I obviously feel very passionate about this, and so I decided that what I should do is write a letter to the Chief Justice. And so I did. Right around May, he's thinking about making his new appointments. He's trying to decide who to put on the committee. So I thought it would be a good time to share my data with him. So I wrote a letter to him, and I CC'd everyone else I could think of. The Federal Judicial Center, I CC'd the Administrative Office of the Courts, I sent it to the committees, I sent it to anyone who would listen. And I also wrote an article for Slate, which you may or may not have seen. If you haven't, please go check it out. So I wrote this article for Slate, and I waited. And you know what? The phone didn't ring, right? The Chief Justice did not pick up the phone and talk to me. But I did hear from some current and former members of the committee, and we had some really interesting discussions. And I've also heard now from members of the Administrative Office of the Courts who work with the Chief on these issues and who are open to hearing me. The door is open like wee much, but it's something, and I'm looking forward to that dialogue. Now, since then, the chief has made new appointments. So this is kind of the depressing part of the talk, as if it hasn't been depressing enough, right? But this is kind of my big, stormy cloud, but I've got a little bit of a silver lining in there, I hope. Teeny weeny, but there's something in there. So the big, bulbous, yucky cloud is that when he went to go make his 6 appointments, he appointed 3 white men and 3 white women. Okay, so obviously not helping with race on those appointments at all. But for the first time ever, you have more than 4 women serving on this particular committee. This is the first time that's happened. But now there are 7 white women, 7 white men, and 1 black man. This is a problem. So it's future talks that I'm going to continue to have with the rulemaking committee, with myself, and I'll continue writing letters to the chief, Okay, so the question is now, what are we gonna do with all of this? Well, I think there are lots of reasons that we should talk about why diversity and inclusion matters. One of the reasons is, like I said, optimal results. We know we get better results. We know this. There's a moral reason. In the financial sector, they've done studies that show that when more women of all colors and men of color are on boards of directors, earnings go up, profits go up. I am certain that there are people in this room who have done better work than me, proving why diversity works and why it matters and why it should be an important value in our society. But here's what I'm going to say to all of you. We got to do more. We got to do more. So professors, what are we going to do? We got to do more to mentor and create pathways for people who don't look like us. Students, you got to reach out to people who don't share your culture and your background, and you got to befriend them. Colleagues within our community, we have to talk to each other. We have to ask questions, but you know what else? We got to listen. We got to listen. All of these things have to happen. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir. Seattle University is an excellent place with amazing people doing phenomenal things. We're all working so hard already. But in the timeless words of Emeril Lagasse, I say we got to kick it up a notch, right? We got to do more. It's time to do more. Now, I also know that we are living in very conflicted and very chaotic times. No doubt about it. But there are other things that we can look to for some amount of hope, right? Let's look at these most recent midterm elections. More than 100 LGBTQ individuals were elected nationwide. More than 100 women are going to the House of Representatives. 12 women are going to the US Senate. For the first time ever, that's the highest number. In addition to these women who have captured our imaginations, like Presley and Ocasio-Cortez, we have additional women going to the office for the first time ever. We have 2 Native American women going to the House of Representatives, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland. And Davids is the first openly gay person to go to the House of Representatives from the state of Kansas. We also have the first 2 Muslim women going to the House of Representatives for the first time. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, right? And Omar is a refugee who came here 20 years ago from Somalia. And now she's on her way to the House of Representatives. So I know this is a difficult time, but I also know that change is coming. Now, the change that is afoot is not nearly as quick or nearly as good as we want it to be. And so it's our obligation, both individually and collectively, to think about what we can do to push it along so that this is no longer fiction, but instead this is our reality. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.